Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome. Wow, there's 50 of you guys in here already. That's awesome. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that let me know if you guys can hear me and see me properly before we get all the way started. Get in the chat and let me know that you guys can hear me and all of that, while I let the world know that we are live. Tons to talk about today. Tons of Arsenal kind of transfer news and updates. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have lots to talk about. Okay, I let the people know. So let's see if more people come. Great. So you guys can hear me loud and clear. You guys can see me. Great. That is good. So how's everybody feeling today? Monday morning. About 4 days until the transfer window opens. So how are you guys feeling now that the transfer window is kind of gonna open soon? Let me know what you guys are thinking about it. I know that, some people have been a little bit, not negative, but not feeling great about the transfer window so far. So let's get started. Let's start off with the Gabriel Jesus news. I kind of saw it. That's awful. Not Saul. I saw it trickling in yesterday evening, and I was like, this is going to be the thing to talk about today. But yeah, let's do it. So the word on the street is that Real Madrid are interested in Gabriel Jesus. Jesus has been offered to Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, and Atletico Madrid is not interested, but Real Madrid is. So yeah, that has kind of gotten people a little bit nervous about, Gabriel Jesus. Are we going to be able to bring him in or not? And then there's also been a rumor out there that Spurs have put in a 47 million pound bid or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of where we stand at the moment. But there's also over the last maybe 15 hours or so, there have been rumors that, Gabriel Jesus has agreed personal terms with Arsenal, and this is still our number one striker option. And Fabrizio Romano on a Spurs podcast said that Arsenal are still the front runners and there has been no bid. So take from all of that what you will. My take on all of this is, let's just calm down. Let's just relax. Every single time we're getting ready to sign a player, other teams start to swoop in and they're interested and they're putting in bids and all this kind of stuff. So let's just calm down, because we know that this is kind of what happens right before we're about to maybe sign somebody. Here are the facts, or, the most concrete, reliable information that we know that's out there. This is Arsenal's number one target. We have been talking to him since April. Gabriel Jesus wants to make sure that he solidifies his spot in the World Cup squad. He wants to be the guy in the next team that he signs for. He wants to stay in England, and he has a relationship with Edu through Brazil and Arteta through Manchester City. So there's a lot going in our favor in terms of this deal. I'm not saying it's 100% going to happen, because I would never promise something like that, because there's always twists and turns in the transfer window. But what I will say is that the idea that he would go to Spurs knowing that he would play second fiddle to Harry Kane, is he also wants to play number 9 and wants to play through the middle. So even if you were to say, okay, well, he can play out wide for Spurs, that's not really what he wants to do. So the idea that he would go to Spurs and play second fiddle to Harry Kane doesn't really sound right. Even though I am sure that, there's no smoke without fire, right? There's probably at least some interest on Spurs side in Gabriel Jesus, right? So, there probably is some interest there. So I'm not going to go as far to say there's no interest and they don't want him or anything like that. They may want him, but I think we can offer him more of the most important things that have been said about what Gabriel Jesus wants in his next club. Now, Real Madrid is where it becomes a little bit more like, okay, if they were actually really interested in him, I would be a little bit more worried because it is Real Madrid and a lot of players grow up wanting to play for Barcelona and Real Madrid. Those are just, if you get an opportunity to play for those two clubs, you go. So that is something that would worry me just a little bit. But again, is he going to start over Karim Benzema? Probably not. I was looking at some of like, underneath the Madrid aggregator accounts, what the Madrid fans were saying, and everybody was like, he'd be a good backup to Karim Benzema, and I'm just like, is that actually what you want right before the World Cup is right around the corner? There's also the questions around the passport situation, like they already have. They have too many foreign passports. I think that's what the rumor is like they have too many foreign passports and somebody's passport would need to be, they would need to get a new passport in order to register Gabriel Jesus. And then also they would need to sell Mariano and Luka Jovic. So there is interest there. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they were offered Gabriel Jesus and they said, this is a good option. But there's a lot of obstacles in the way of them being able to get this deal done. So with just them saying that they're interested or they like the player, which is basically all that was really out there, I'm not super worried about it. So again, I'm not saying that like 100% Gabriel Jesus is going to come to Arsenal, but I think there's enough things on our side and enough concrete evidence out there in the ether to make me feel like I don't need to panic just yet. So we'll see like what happens with that. But I also recognize that there are some Arsenal fans that are like, thank God, like somebody else wants him. Because there's some Arsenal fans that don't want Gabriel Jesus. And I hear that and I understand. Gabriel Jesus would be the striker that I would want to come in because I feel like he's the best that you can get that for sure is going to bring up the level of the team and has the required like experience and stuff like that. But for some, this is happy news. For others, they are panicking, which I completely understand. I completely understand that when it gets down to it and other teams are interested in your player, or the player that you think your club is going to get, then, you start to worry a little bit more. Saida says, I don't tend to listen to Fabrizio much when it comes to Arsenal news. He loves recycling news, which makes sense because it keeps him relevant. Yeah, that's very true. Like I wouldn't say Fabrizio Romano is super reliable. I would just say what came from the mouth of his agent doesn't necessarily align with what those two clubs would be able to offer him. Keenan says, agreeing personal terms sadly doesn't mean much anymore. He could easily switch up in the end and choose Real. They just won the Champions League. Again, like I understand that. And like I already said, like they can offer him Champions League. And that's the only club that I would really be super worried if they actually started really going for him. But again, they haven't said anything about, actually putting in a bid, and they would need somebody to get a new passport in order to register him. And they'd also need to sell a couple of players. So I wouldn't get too worried until those things start coming to fruition. And also that would also prolong the deal, which once again, his agent said that they want to get this tied up soon. So if he's going to have to wait until the end of the transfer window to see if Real Madrid would actually, a deal would actually materialize with them, or, we could offer him everything that he wants and the wage that he wants, and it could get sewed up early on in the window, that still puts us in a good position. So I understand that it's Real Madrid and they can offer him Champions League, but all the report said is that they like the player, and that's pretty much all that was there. So we don't really need to like worry. And then there's also the aspect of like when the initial report says that he's been offered to Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, that feels like agent talk to me. that we are in a moment in the negotiations potentially with Gabriel Jesus where there's, maybe a distance in terms of what Gabriel Jesus wants and what Arsenal are willing to offer, or there's a distance between what Arsenal are willing to pay and Manchester City want. So obviously drumming up more um interest in the player will potentially make Arsenal act faster or pay what's required. So again, like sometimes it's just agent talk, and we're going to talk about the Scamacca stuff as well, but something tells me that that's also a smokescreen for us to get Gabriel Jesus done, because that doesn't feel like anything that could potentially really come to like fruition. Prince Tutu says, I don't think we should be worried about Jesus going to Madrid. He wants to be the main guy. He will only get that in Madrid. We should just relax. He's our number one target. Blaze says, I'm not feeling good about the transfer window because rumors change every time. Last week, we was linked with Gabriel Jesus, Hickey, and Tielemans, but right now heard rumors about Scamacca and Molina. Well, Molina's actually been around since the beginning of the transfer window, and Scamacca, again, feels like a smokescreen or an alternative to Gabriel Jesus. Hickey plays on the left, Molina plays on the right. So I don't really know if the rumors are changing. It's just some are more at the forefront and some are more in the background. But from what I like since the beginning of the transfer window, we've been linked to Molina, and we'll talk about him in a couple of minutes as well. Keenan says Benzema's 34. This is probably his last season, but he'll probably start the majority of their games, So, I mean, I understand like the panic, like it's Real Madrid, they just won the Champions League. Let's just relax. If they start talking about a bid actually materializing, meaning they have the passport situation sorted and they also have sold Jovic and Mariano, then I'll start to panic then. But for me, it's just not, I can't really get worked up just yet because every window that this happens, I get worked up for absolutely nothing. And it just ends up that we're at the end of negotiations with this player and we get it over the line. Unless it's like, a Vlahovic or something like that, which never really feels real to begin with. This is just not something that I feel like I'm really that worried about just yet. That's not to say that I won't start to freak out if it drags on. Lucas says it makes more sense for Real than Jesus, but you never say no to them. So we will see. Exactly. We know you never say no to Real Madrid. There's very few players in the history that say no to them. It's just a matter of, will that bid materialize? Like, will they actually go after him? Do they actually, will they be able to do it quickly? Because that's really important for Gabriel Jesus. And he's still a young player. So there's other opportunities for him to, go in a different direction at another point in time. He has to do what's best for his career right now. And that World Cup is really, really important. If he's not starting for his club team, then he may not make it. He's on the fringes now, and he's such a good player. So risk it and go to Real Madrid and maybe not start as many games. I'm not sure if that's the right thing for him. But again, it's Real Madrid. So there you go. Mackie says, I think it's just a tactic to hurry up Arsenal. C. Wilder says, I think we'll end up paying over the odds, but I love the fella and I don't care at all. Keenan says, let's hope Edu has this Jesus deal all lined up and we can run through the minute the window opens. If we lose him because we want to haggle over 10 million, it will be pretty sad. And I think this is where, like, you're right, the negotiations are really important. And whether or not Edu actually has this wrapped up or not, I don't think this is worth haggling it down by 5 million and potentially losing out on him. Them saying that, like, and on, like, also the rumor about the Spurs bid was coming from a very, like, obscure place as well. So keep that in mind. It was very obscure. Like, it wasn't any Spurs related outlet. It was like a Juventus, almost like blog. It was very strange and very obscure, but it was like 47 million pounds. So we know that Arsenal want to pay between 40 and 50 and Manchester City want 55. So it might be between that, but like if they don't want to haggle, I wouldn't haggle over like 5 million if this is your number one choice. And if the second option is something that will never come to fruition, like I wouldn't risk it. Tony says Arsenal are looking at Scamacca to get the price down. Man City are shopping Jesus to get the price up. Just standard negotiating tactics. And that's another part of it. Like I really do think Scamacca is like a smokescreen, and negotiating like you do. I don't really think I think that we're interested in him, but not really. We know Jesus is the number one target. Lynn says, but does Jesus really want to sit on the bench at Real? I mean, some players really do, but look at what happened with Luka Jovic. And let me just say this, like, I think Gabriel Jesus is such a good player, so I don't think he would end up exactly the same. But this is a team that in 2 seasons can, trigger the release clause for Haaland, at Manchester City. And I'm sure they're looking at him, especially now that they lost Mbappe. So, the idea that Gabriel Jesus, he's never going to be the man at Real Madrid. They're always going to bring in better players, and you're always going to be second fiddle. Like that's just kind of what the reality is. When Benzema leaves, they will get somebody else. You're a placeholder until they get who they really want. So, I mean, I think if you've always wanted to play for Real Madrid, it's probably worth the risk. But if you look at what happened with Luka Jovic, I don't know if I would do it. But then I also have a vested interest, and it fits my narrative to believe that he would turn down Real Madrid, Lucas says negotiations with City are probably more complicated than with Jesus. We can give him a big wages and the role, but City still have leverage, so they can demand 50 million if they want. Blaze says, do you think Edu and Arteta have the same list of players they want to buy, or they had different opinions? So this is interesting because there was a report that had come out around Aaron Hickey, and that maybe something about Arteta not being convinced by the player, or not being convinced that we need to go after Aaron Hickey. And, it just made me wonder whether or not, there was maybe a difference of opinions between Arteta and Edu in regards to Aaron Hickey. And I put it out there, and of course, immediately it was like, kiboshed by a certain part of the Arsenal fan base, because there's no way that Edu and Arteta can have a difference of opinion. They're tight. There's absolutely no way that they have a difference of opinion. And I'm just like, have you been under a rock? Like just last summer, Edu wanted Emerson Royale and Neto from Brazil, or not Brazil, I'm sorry. He is Brazilian, but he's from Barcelona. And we ended up with Tomiyasu and Ramsdale because Arteta really pushed for those signings. We also know that Tavares was an Edu signing. So, like, the idea that they never disagree on signings is complete crap, because we know that they do. And it's not that big of a deal either. I think also, like, there's almost like this inclination to wipe away any semblance of disruption or negativity behind the scenes at Arsenal. And Klopp and, Liverpool's director of football disagree on players all the time. It's normal for the manager to want somebody specific and the director of football to show up with a different option based on like the financials and, what's actually available and things like that. So, and their connections. So, the idea that like they would never disagree on something, I thought was very silly for people to come out and say like, absolutely not. That's just being negative. It's not. Like, first of all, it's happened before, and 2, it's freaking normal. So I do think that they may have a difference of opinion. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe Edu, who seems very interested in shopping in Italy, likes Aaron Hickey, and maybe Arteta even likes Aaron Hickey. But if there's an opportunity for Arteta to get Zinchenko, he might be pushing the Zinchenko move, because I feel like it's okay to say that maybe Arteta likes shopping in league, and that's why we got, or maybe not even in league, but like players that have played in the Premier League before. So that's why we got Ben White. That's why we got Aaron Ramsdale. Stuff like that. where, maybe Edu likes Serie A. So I do think that maybe they have some differing opinions on stuff, but that doesn't mean that they are having big blow ups or they hate each other and there's like bad blood. It's just, Arteta has a very strong personality as well. Like he has a very strong personality. So if he wants a certain player, like specifically, he might be really pushing for it. If Arteta wants Zinchenko and, you know, Edu wants Hickey, I think we should go for Zinchenko because for some reason I feel like Arteta's talent ID might be a little bit better, but that's just me projecting at this point. Halu Hamulabi says, with the World Cup so close, I really can't see Jesus preferring Real Madrid over Arsenal. C. Wilder says, my guess is 55 mil. Lynn says, I think that Edu should be paying up so that if the deal has been agreed with Jesus, it should be paid. Crypto FPL says, we have done City a favor by selling our best players in the past as payback, time for City to return the favor. Lucas says Jesus is more versatile than Jovic. He can play with Big Bens. Yeah, he can. He can play. And I'm not saying they're exactly the same type of player, but Real Madrid are always going to look to bring in better players and bring in stars. That's what they do, So in 2 years, they'll be able to trigger the release clause for Haaland. Don't be surprised if they actually try to go out and do it. The next biggest, greatest thing, they'll always go out there and get it. And so if Gabriel Jesus wants to be preferred and be the man, he's not going to be able to go to the likes of like Real Madrid and get that treatment. He would be a place filler for whatever the big signing is within the next year or 2 years. So, it may work out for him in the short term, but maybe not in the long term. I'm going off of based on what his agent has said, and so maybe his agent is lying, or maybe Gabriel Jesus deep down is like, I'd rather play for a Champions League team that just won just won the whole thing. Fair enough. And if you lose out to Real Madrid, what can you say? It's the best team out there, so C. Walter says exactly, Jess. If they had Jesus, they defo still replace Benz. Let's see. Lucas says, I think we really wanted Livramento before his injury. Now it's going to be hard to be Juve for Molina. I love that you've said that because we're going to talk about that. But I do have that suspicion as well that Livramento, who would have been perfect for a right back starting option for us in league, total like Arteta type player, tore his ACL. And so we're looking at somebody that's kind of similar, and it would be interesting to see if we can get that deal over the line. Lynn says, I am thinking that Jesus might be looking at other clubs, and all this chat about Edu and Arteta having good ties with Jesus, this should be a no-brainer. Yeah, so I'm not really too worried about it. If we start hearing about bids from Real Madrid, then I would start like really worrying about it at that point. But not yet. So yeah. But all right, there's 150 of you guys in here. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. I'm showing you guys like everything I'm doing. Okay, so let's talk about the scam. The scam. So this rumor keeps coming up, and kind of how I alluded to it earlier, but said Arsenal have submitted the bid for Scamacca, and Sassuolo wants a bigger deal, or they want more cash, but they keep mentioning the other Italian clubs, and so I just feel like this is just a come hither call from Sassuolo. We may have, and I think people get really bogged down in terminology. Like if you're interested in a player, that means you put in a bid. I think there's a lot of preliminary talks between clubs about what the offer will be before like an official bid goes in, like best and final offers and things of that nature. So, an offer could just be like, if you're interested in a player, then the club says, well, what are you willing to offer? Edu says, we're willing to offer 35 million, and that's it. And then, Sassuolo can take that and basically, put it and be like, hey, we got a $35 million offer from Arsenal. Come hither, come hither. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like we're pushing hard. Like, I really do not see this one. And it's not that I don't rate the guy. I think he's a good player. I really do. And I think I said that yesterday. But I just don't see him leaving, especially when like the original report stated that he initially just said no because he wants to wait for Inter. And there's a verbal agreement with Inter, which basically means exactly what we talked about the other day, is that he's been tapped up and they basically said, wait, we'll come get you. Just wait, we'll see what's going on with other things, and then we'll come back and get you. Maybe not this season, but next season. So it could be like a loan with an obligation to buy or something like that. I don't think we're getting this player, but equally, I think it's a good smokescreen while we negotiate for Gabriel Jesus. Basically, I think, Fabrizio Romano, which again, if you don't really give him any sort of like, you don't really think he's reliable in terms of Arsenal news, what he does know is Serie A. And he said Sassuolo, Carinvalli, which is the CEO at Sassuolo, says on the Arsenal bid rumors for Scamacca, there's nothing concrete yet for Scamacca, just some context with some clubs, he told Sky Sports. Of course, after playing with the national team, the interest is now growing. They are trying to garner interest for Scamacca, and they are using Arsenal as bait because we probably said this is as much as we would offer for him. And I think that's just what clubs do. They have 4 or 5 players that they're interested in for a certain position, and the clubs say, how much would you be willing to offer? They say how much, and then they can use that as well as like, well, this team is willing to offer this. What are you willing to offer? I don't really think it's like a bid. I think it's just like those initial talks, like what he said. And I really do think they're trying to get those Italian teams interested, because that's where he wants to go. And you can't just sell a player off to wherever, you want them to go. They have to want to go to those places. So even if we come in with another bid, they can't just shuttle him off to Arsenal just because the bid was made and it reaches like what Sassuolo wants. So this seems very scamish. And so I wouldn't get too wrapped up in this. But I know some people really, really want this player because they want the profile. I would just say, like, with this guy, he is a good player, but I don't think he's anywhere near the levels that people are making him out to seem. Like, he's still somewhat of a prospect. Like, he hasn't scored that many goals. Like, he's not a sure thing. And so, like, I get that you guys want the profile, but like, this guy, I don't think we should be like twerking for him the way that we are, like, as a fan base. That's all I'm going to say. And I also think people like the way he looks, like the tattoos, and he's 6'5" and all this kind of stuff. I'm more worried about what the player can offer us. You know what I mean? Jermaine Gregoire says, do you think there's an issue with Bissouma's playing style and why Arsenal haven't gone for him? Potentially, I think it's a combination of the case that's over his head and the fact that he's not necessarily like, he's more of a destroyer type and a more of like a ball winner type of a central defensive midfielder versus like a ball playing one. So I think it might be a little bit of the style as well. I've never seen Arsenal really be interested in that type of central defensive midfielder. It's always been some sort of ball playing type of player. Let's see. Denzel says, I honestly don't think he would be able to handle the Premier League. In fact, I think Eddie Nketiah might be a better goal scorer. Keenan says, Arteta and his team are killed it with the young transfers last summer. So if Scamacca has been scouted and vetted, I'm down with the transfer. I just see warning signs all over it. I mean, I think there's probably interest there in terms of like we've sounded out like the agent and the club. I just don't know if we're actually going to move forward with it. And I just think with first of all, I think also you have to go back and like we're not going to get two strikers, and there's been too many reliable reports around Gabriel Jesus being the number one option, and I get that like okay, well we must be turning to Scamacca because Gabriel Jesus is not happening. I would just say let's let the dust settle. Like the window hasn't even opened yet, and we'll know a lot more after the 11th. I think that's the last game that Brazil plays. Actually, let me look that up, and we'll know more after that. Um, let me see. Yeah, that game was canceled. I didn't see that. Yeah, the game. Yeah, so their last game was today. So now we'll probably see more information coming out around Gabriel Jesus. The window will open and we'll see. So yeah, I'm not quite sure that like we're pivoting, which I know a lot of people that's what they're saying, like we're pivoting. I still think that this is a smokescreen. Lynn says these agents, etc., know we need a striker, and they will put this out to get this player the player club. Yeah, for sure. I just can't see it. I know people really want him. I know they do, but like it just doesn't feel real. Reggie Perry says which part of Italian players don't leave Italy is unclear. I mean, some people were saying that that was like an empty statement the other day when I said it on the show, and I'm just like, but it's not like an empty statement. It's like it's a true one. You can name like the one or two that have left, like Jorginho and Verratti and a couple of others, but as a rule, especially if they've already been tapped up by the bigger clubs, which he has a verbal agreement with it, Inter, it's not happening. He might just wait till next season. The likes of Lautaro Martinez might leave next summer. Um, Napoli may sell Osimhen next summer, and then there'll be openings for him to go somewhere. So I'm really not that worried about it. Denzel says AC Milan might go for him since they can afford to buy more players, so he might go there. Exactly. So yeah, it just is what it is. So I would say we can go ahead and move on from this one. But yeah, the scam, it's not really going away just yet. There's 164 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And so we're actually going to move on to the story of the day, the one that makes me the most happy because I feel like I am, again, speaking something into fruition. You guys know that like I definitely love Gabriel Jesus and I hope he comes to the club. And I've been talking about him for a year. I also love Zinchenko. And so I'm like pushing this. I'm like definitely like, come on, but basically this came from the Standard. Simon Collins said that Mikel Arteta is making Zinchenko a priority signing and will offer him his favored midfield role to join Arsenal. City won't stand in his way if he asks to leave, but West Ham will rival Arsenal for his signature, although Moy sees him as a left back. So that's very interesting. And I think that, hearing that there's more interest and it may be substantiated by a bid and it's becoming a priority. Me likey what I'm hearing. Me likey, me likey, me likey. And so I think that this would be a better use of resources than Aaron Hickey. Because I mean, if the rumors are true around Arsenal having to pare back our transfer window, then we really need to think about quality, in terms of who we bring in. And so I don't think there's a lot of room for the project type signings. So if we can only bring in 4 players and one is like left back cover, 2 forwards, one being Gabriel Jesus and 1 midfielder, then having a player of his level and his experience that could cover left back and midfield would be probably the best use of resources. I did see that the quoted price would be 40 million, which is 20 million more pounds than what we would pay for Hickey. But at the same time, like I'd rather pay for better quality than go after Hickey for 25 million. That's the same amount that we paid for Kieran Tierney. That's the same amount that we paid for Gabriel. And so him being 19 and kind of a little bit of an unknown, I'm not sure that it's necessarily like the best option for us. I still think that we can up the quality of midfield. I saw somebody had tweeted that like they don't believe that Zinchenko is an upgrade on Granit Xhaka in midfield. And I can't back that statement. Like, I do think he's an upgrade, and I at least think that he's good competition. And that's what we really lack in this team in midfield, in the midfield and the attacking spots, actually everywhere, is good competition for places. So he walks in. You don't need to worry about him adapting to the league. You know, he's been there and done it before. He's won the Premier League with Man City a couple of times. You know, it just kind of makes sense in terms of if we don't have the money to bring in so many players, then if you can only bring in 4, bring in the best option for left back cover, and then him and Tielemans and Odegaard can switch in between each other, and even maybe ESR as the 8s on either side of Thomas Partey. And then you start to build a really strong team. And Granit Xhaka, I get that people really like him, you know, and people have really kind of changed their minds about him, but he's a good player that needs to be upgraded upon. You know, we've seen the extent to which that midfield can perform, in my opinion, with you know, Thomas Partey, Granit Xhaka, and Odegaard. That midfield was really good when Thomas Partey was playing in it, but if Thomas Partey is not in it, it's not the same. So I get that it's like, well, what happens with Granit Xhaka if you bring in Zinchenko? And it's almost like people are afraid that he's going to be so good that something might happen to Granit Xhaka. I don't know why we care about this. Like, I really don't understand what, like, as a fan base, why we have this. I think we're sentimental, and we also have not seen competition for places, so we're almost like afraid of it. Like, what's going to happen with Emile Smith Rowe? If he's good enough, he'll play. That's the reality. I mean, we've also re-signed El Neni to be some sort of like just like a not a cheerleader, but like a culture guy. I don't think we really signed him to get very many minutes. So if Xhaka's kind of the backup kind of guy, then it's fine. Like, I don't really understand why we're so worried about what's going to happen with Granit Xhaka, and we're so like, as a fan base, there's some people that are desperate to force the narrative that he's so much better than what people think. He's probably better than what people give him credit for, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't upgrade upon him and put pressure on him for his position. That's what's going to make this team better, not making sure that you have clear backups and clear starters. That has not worked for us. So I think this is the best of both worlds for me. You know, bringing in a midfielder of his quality plus a left back cover is probably going to cost you twice as much, you know, so getting one player, you know, for the 40 million and being able to do both, I think is really good. Especially because you know Tierney is brittle. You know Tierney is brittle and you can't rely upon him. So it's just for me, like, to see people like going to bat for Granit Xhaka, like, I get it. And no, I don't feel like he should be abused. And I do think some people take it too far, but we need to move like forward. And I think this would be a good move to move forward, especially if he wants to play midfield and like West Ham still see him as like a left back. If he wants to play midfield, then put him in midfield. Like, put him in midfield. Joka says, Xhaka, a reliable player. Tierney, not a reliable player. Just keep Tierney and get rid of Xhaka. He isn't good enough. Well, I get what you're saying, but I also said that eventually we're going to have to move on from Kieran Tierney, but we just gave him a new contract and he's younger than Granit Xhaka. So, like, I hear what you're saying, but like, Xhaka being reliable doesn't mean that we shouldn't we shouldn't upgrade upon him. And midfield is really a place where we've been extremely weak for a lot of years, and he's kind of been a part of that midfield. So, I understand what you're trying to say. Reliability is great and it's a skill, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't move forward and try to bring in players that can push for that position as well. There's been a lot of talk around Tielemans and where will he play. You know, I think he can play on either side, left side or right side, but for Leicester, he's played a lot on the right. So that might kind of speak to, the future of Odegaard, and not that his future is done, but there might be competition for his place. So if you have Zinchenko and Xhaka on the left and you have Odegaard and Tielemans on the right, you have good competition for places and will be in 4 competitions. What is the big deal? There's enough minutes to go around. And if you're afraid that players won't want to be here because they're not getting playing time, well, guess what? They're just not good enough then. I don't feel like we should be holding space for players. Like, if they're good enough, they will play. They just will be. There's so many minutes for these players moving forward. And for a team that missed out, and a fan base that missed out on top 4 with 2 games to go, that had like 5 or 6 rotational options in their side on the last day of the season or the last 2 days of the season, I would think that people would be more excited about bringing in players like this, instead of being like, well, what's going to happen with Xhaka? Who cares? If he's good enough, he'll play. What do you mean? He'll just be on the bench. Lynn says, for me, it's what that is what improves players, the competition. And I think the best way to build a team is like for you to bring in starter quality and then the starters drop to the bench, versus you keep your starters and you just bring in backups underneath. That's what we kind of did, and it didn't work. So, Saida says, just because a player is reliable, it doesn't mean we can't upgrade on them. Also, what's wrong with signing reliable players that with actual quality? Mikey says, if we get Zinchenko and Yuri, we can survive some games with El Neni deputizing it as the 6th. Sorry. Jess, wifey needs to dress appropriately in training if he wants to remain in this team. Yeah. Yeah, Tierney, I love Tierney, and he's definitely one of my favorite players. He was the first player kind of like beyond Saliba and Martinelli as a part of this new core. So it would hurt me if we had to move on from him. I don't think we're quite there. But I think if you bring in somebody like Zinchenko, you can rotate Tierney a lot better, and then we won't be as worried about it. But yeah, Tierney, like, he's really brittle, and so, and you can't rely upon him, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yo-Yo says, the best Wenger years, even the latter, we had an abundance of attacking options, and it was never like an idiot. It was never like a problem. Like, it never was like the best Wenger teams, like you had Kanu and Will Tord on the bench, and they weren't like crying every 5 minutes. See, we're so afraid of players being like not wanting to be here because they're not playing. And is that the type of culture that we're trying to build here, where people feel really comfortable and stuff? No, I don't really think so. Elliot Roberts says, question, would you rather Basuma or Zinchenko to compete with Party Xhaka? I mean, I wish I wouldn't have to choose, but if I'm saying in terms of just midfield depth, I would say Basuma, because he's the best midfielder, I think, in terms of what he does and his specialty and all that kind of stuff. So I think I would just on paper choose Basuma, but in the situation that we're in, where we kind of need cover for we need cover for left back and we need cover for midfield, I think Zinchenko's a good option, especially if we're going to have to, the window is not going to be as big as maybe we thought it was going to be. So yeah. Denzel says, we need players for Christ's sake, because we already see that the moment Arsenal FC lose a starter, we completely turn average. And I mean, it's just strange to me seeing people turn down a player like Zinchenko or try to advocate for Xhaka in some way because they want to make the point that people don't respect or whatever Granit Xhaka. All I care about is us improving the team. That's it, and so I don't advocate for like abusing Granit Xhaka, but I'm always like, we need to improve on that midfield because it is weak, technically. So yeah, I would love this signing, and I like that it feels like the links are getting more firm, and the Aaron Hickey ones are starting to fall away a little bit more, and I think that would be a better option. Even though it would cost a little more, we're about to spend 25 million on a 19-year-old. You know, um, we spent the same amount on Kieran Tierney. Um, let's see. She Knows Football says Party better get more stamina so he can play 34 games. Yeah, Thomas Party is somebody that um, really, I think, needs to have a good season and play more games because the last 2 seasons have been disappointing. I do think he played when he was playing well, like, for those 4 months, he was basically unplayable, but you need more than that. I do think not having reliable backup has killed that off, like, it really hurt us to have I think Sambi has a lot of, talent, but he was never close enough to Thomas Party. But Thomas Party does need to have a good season. Like, I love him to death, but like he needs to have a good season. He needs to be fit. If he's not, then it's a problem, I think. Let's see. Gilfy says Arsenal need players to compete rather than being backup. Look what happened with Lakanga and Tavares. We could not keep starting them because they were not good enough. Lucas says we are slow and athletic in midfield. And, I some people were saying that like Granit Xhaka and his physicality will be missed if we have Zinchenko and Tielemans and Odegaard. I don't think Arteta, I think we mistake Xhaka being ready to fight for physicality. I don't really think that he's like physical in that way, because I've seen him get bullied as well. But to the way that you counteract the physicality of certain teams that are going to try to bully you is to be just better on the ball than those teams. And when you have like Zinchenko, who's like press resistant, Tielemans press resistant, Thomas Partey press resistant, then it doesn't matter whether or not the other team will like physically dominate you. And I think we started to get really dominated physically when Thomas Partey and Tomiyasu were gone. Because when you add Cedric and like Sambi or El Neni into the team, you do lose that. So I get where people want physicality, but I also don't think that Xhaka is like a pinnacle of it. I think he's unathletic and slow, and we mistake his wanting to fight for physicality, to be honest. Let's see. Lucas says, Jess Neves looks so good for Portugal, to be fair. Yeah, and I think if we're willing to look at international performances and give them credit for those, then Neves looked good for Portugal, just like I thought Zinchenko looked good for the Ukraine. Neves, I think, is a good player. He just is not the type of player that I would want for Arsenal. Like, I think he would be good at Man United, and I think that's where he'll probably end up, to be honest. So fair enough for him, I know a lot of Arsenal fans do like Neves, which I understand why they do. Let's see. So yeah, Zinchenko, love that news. Moving on. Let's talk about Molina. Some of you guys were, kind of mentioning him before. And basically, like, the news on Molina is just like Arsenal have put in a bid for Molina, or some sort of offer. So take that how you will. It's a 30 million pound offer, I believe. Let me make sure I get the right information here. Also, I am sad that like Kevin Betsy is leaving. Where is it? Give me 1 second. Where is it? Or else I'll just have to go from memory, which is fine because I usually don't forget things. So basically what the report was that the sporting director at Udinese was saying that it would be really difficult for them to hold on to Molina, who's the right back at Udinese, because Arsenal have put in a 30 million euro offer for him. So I found that interesting. I know that we're interested in him, just like, Edu seems like he really wants to shop in Serie A. So fair enough. But like I told you guys the other day, Atletico and Juventus are really interested in him too. And, they were basically saying that like Juventus want to find a creative solution to bring him in, which basically means like we're going to try to get him for nothing. So again, this also feels like we've put in an offer. We've said how much we'll be willing to pay for him. Maybe the player's a little bit apprehensive about leaving Italy or wants to see what other options come about. And so Udinese uses our name in the press to try to get the likes of Juventus and Atletico to come up on their bids, because usually our bid is the most, you know, but they want those teams that they can actually get the player to go to come up on their bids. So, I mean, I would love Molina at Arsenal, just because I think we do need another right back. I know it's not a priority, and Ben White can play there, Saliba can play there, other players can play there. But it would just be nice to have a really good right back and just be fully stocked in that position. And, Cedric kind of fall into the Chambers role, because at a certain point, Chambers wasn't even making game day squads. And Cedric was making game day squads instead of him. So Molina, really good 24-year-old Argentinian right back, scores goals, dynamic, definitely something that we need. Maybe not need right at the moment, but I mean, if we could throw Pablo Mari into the deal, that might help. But when I see, teams like Juventus, eh, like wanting this player, I just don't know if we have a chance, because I mean, it's not that, I mean, I know he's not Italian, but he plays in that league and they tend to just want to stay in and around that league. And if Juventus calls for some reason, everybody pulls their panties down. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's one of those. But I would love him at Arsenal, but I could see another, like the creative solution is a loan, a 2-year loan with a 25 million, obligation to buy, or something like that. But we are interested in him. I just don't know if we'll get it done. Or if he's desperate enough to leave, where if they don't come up with the cash, that he'll come to Arsenal anyway. He might just wait. Keenan says, we desperately need a solid competition for KT and Tommy. I hope we open up the coffers and buy a left back and a right back. I mean, that's what I would love to happen, but I feel like right back might fall through the crack, because left back, I think, is a priority, and it should be. But when you look at like needing a midfielder and 2 forwards, then it's kind of like, okay, well, now we're talking about being like super ambitious. And I don't know if Arsenal's going to do that after missing out on Champions League. So I can see this one being the one that really falls through the crack. This and central defensive midfielder, I think, are the 2 positions that we probably should be filling, but we won't. And it may hurt us in the long run, because having Cedric as the next man up as a right back is not great. You guys know how I feel about Cedric against the against like lower level opposition. He's fine, but when we get to the crunch time of the season, when everybody's really tired and when people are going to be back from the World Cup, he'll be available to play in crunch minutes when the likes of Tomiyasu fall apart. And so relying upon him, potentially, if we were to get far in the Europa League or towards the end of the season when we really need to perform, will be something that if it happens again, I will be furious, because we have the opportunity to make sure it doesn't happen. And maybe it's not Edu and Arteta's fault, but then you have to look above and say, you're not ambitious enough. We need more money. Where's the cash? Pay me. Because I mean, it's just a recipe for it to happen again. And as much as Saliba and Ben White can play at right back, it's not ideal to move them out of their preferred position and not have like a more attacking option as a right back. So I would like for them to try to figure it out. But my second option for this would be if Molina, we can sell Molina, is try to see if Brooke Norton Cuffy can do a job. But I almost feel like that's unfair for him because he needs another loan. But I just can't do another season of Cedric being and playing in important games. I just feel 2 seasons in a row I've been watching Cedric be relied upon when it really matters the most. And I get that we're a long-term project, but how much longer are you gonna just ignore some of these big gaping holes? Cedric's not good enough. Crypto FPL says, imagine Arsenal Football Club having Holding, Cedric, and Tavares as cover as backups. The club have lost focus. We will be competing in the fourth tournament with them. Monty97 says, forget about right back for now and just trust Tommy and Cedric. Their priority must be midfield and strikers minimum. Lucas says, I can see him in that Atletico kid, classic La Liga and Simeone wing back. Yeah, I can see that as well. Dave Riley says, Jess, what's your back for at the start of the season? Next season with Saliba now coming back to the club. Tierney, Gabriel, Ben White, Tomiyasu. Yeah. I want to see Saliba, but I'm also like not desperate to throw him in. I would love to see Saliba, get eased into Premier League life. I like the back four as is. I thought when they were all together, it was fine. So that would be my back four. That being said, I would love to see Saliba rotated in, but I don't want him thrown straight in. Lucas says CDM right back and big striker next summer, in my opinion, sadly. Yeah, I mean, probably. I don't see us getting another striker. That's why when people are like, well, we're going to get Scamacca and Jesus after re-signing, and Kedia, I think, is a little bit fantasy driven. It's more like it's more Disney. We're not really in a Disney world. So yeah, I don't really see that happening. So yeah, we're still kind of building that core, which I understand. It's just it's unfortunate because we know what the reality of it's going to be, right? Is that when it gets down to the important part of the season, which is the end of the season, when everybody is ravaged by the season and all four competitions and the World Cup, Cedric will be playing important games, and we know what that looks like. Keenan says Molina can cover left back. He's much better than Hickey and could cover both Tommy and KT in a pinch. Alan says, I love your turn of phrase regarding Juve. It's the same with Barca and Real. They think they just have to whistle and you'll bend over. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, they tap up all the good talent in those leagues, and those players are just like waiting around for their opportunity. And, what can you do? Dwayne says, hi, Jess. I agree that we need healthy competition for game time. Yeah, I mean, we need it, and we need it badly. So yeah, there's about 200 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's move on. I like this bit of news as well, you guys. I've been waiting on this to come. Basically, like, Arsenal are looking to give Gabriel Magalhaes a new contract, and we kind of talked about it yesterday as well, that this has to get done. We need to give Gabriel a new contract, Martinelli, as well as Bukayo Saka and William Saliba. So, I mean, Arsenal and Tim Lewis and everybody, they need to get on this. These are good young players that are worth a lot to us. So, yeah. Gabriel getting a new contract is definitely due. He's one of the lower earners, I think, and so he deserves a pay bump. And I also think that that's kind of where the Juventus rumors are coming from. I think that Juventus are interested in him, but he definitely doesn't want to go there. He's happy at Arsenal, but your agents will always kind of put out there that somebody else wants him to kind of like push you into making sure that you give the player the new contract. And so hearing about Gabriel getting a new contract, I think, is well-deserved and past due. Gabriel, like, of course, like, on his day, sometimes he could really piss me off. And like when we're doing player ratings or whatever, I'll say that he's, made a mistake or whatever. But I stand by what I said, a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago, that Gabriel for me was the most improved from the season, his first season to his second season. I thought beyond, that little kind of wobble that him and Ben White seemed to have as soon as Tavares and Cedric came into the team, he was so good. And he was the leader back there where Ben White was a little bit more shaky, which is to be expected because he hasn't played with Arsenal before, trying to get used to a back four and things like that. But I always thought that Gabriel working with David Luiz the season prior would help him a lot. And I do think it did. I do think that working with David Luiz the season before, getting that first season under his belt, kind of propelled him into his second season. And had we not had so many injuries to our fullbacks, I don't think they would have been so they wouldn't have fallen off the way that they did at certain points, and they are still very young. But Gabriel being a part of the Brazilian national team setup where there's other Brazilian center backs that they could choose, but they've chosen Gabriel, I think speaks to how good he's been. I mean, he scored a lot of goals. I watched his season review, and his ball playing ability out of the back has been so much better, and he doesn't get very much credit, like in terms of, I think the fan base likes him, but outside of that, the media, they don't really talk about him, and I don't really care if they do or not because we know what we have. I hope we know what we have. So I would expect him to get a nice little pay bump. I would expect him, to be compensated like the other really important players for this project. Again, I would not even consider selling him unless it was like a really good number. And even at that, I'd still be kind of like, I don't know, because he plays so many games for us and he's so consistent for the most part. And yes, he makes mistakes. Like everybody makes mistakes. And at Arsenal, they get highlighted more than at any other club. But this is the guy. This is the guy. Like, I love Gabriel. And as far as I'm concerned, his position is not really under threat at the moment. So yeah, I think that he's been so good this season. So I'm happy to see us maybe trying to get him a new contract. And yeah, I mean, this was a really good bit of business. I remember when we first got linked with him, watched a couple of compilations and then went on social media and I saw that people were like, he's nowhere near as good as Saliba. Because you remember at that point, we had already bought Saliba the season prior. And people were really comparing him to Saliba. I was like, okay, he looks pretty good, not amazing, but good. We're going to buy him for 25 million. And that saga was so long. Let me know if you guys remember the Gabriel saga. It was so long and I was panicking the whole time because it was the same summer that, it was Thomas Partey versus Aouar. But this has been, I mean, when we talk about slam dunk signings, I think this is one of them. It's a better signing than Thomas Partey, better than, some of the other signings that we've made. It just, for 25 million to get a player like this that's improved the way that he has, this is a really like a slam dunk signing. It really is. St. Vincent says, where do you rank Gabriel as far as CBs in the Prem? Somewhere between like maybe somewhere around 7. I think somewhere around 7. I do think that there's some center backs that have been around a little bit longer that are probably a little better than him. But I think he's somewhere around 7. That's what I would say. I think with center backs, you have to give them time as well. Like, I think he'll just continue to get better. Yo-Yo says, Gabriel has lost his teeth for the club. My guy. Alan says, we need to put 100 million release clauses in their contract. So if Juve come knocking, they need the Wonga in their hand. Let's see. She Knows Football says he's solid. Die Hard Gunner says Gabriel was an excellent buy for Arsenal. No complaints at all. He is awesome and easily our best center back. Let's see. Craig says, I was very surprised we got Gabriel. We already had Saliba and never thought any other center back wasn't on our radar. And boom, he arrived. Yeah, he did. He's great. I love Gabriel so much. And I mean, we all have like different ideas about what his level could be. There's some people that feel like he could be world class, and others just feel like he's going to be really good and solid. When you talk about a $25 million signing that has come out like this, it's a slam dunk, you know? And so, I mean, Juventus are looking at him to be Chiellini's, replacement. And I don't think you can really take that lightly. I mean, it's, Juventus, Serie A, they know something about defenders, right? So as much as I can't stand them, so I love freaking Gabriel so much. And so I'm happy to see him get a new deal. Very, very excited about it. Monty97 says, I love Ben White, but I feel Gabby and Saliba are going to be the wall. And if that's what it becomes, then that's what it becomes. My whole thing is like, I don't want to project anything upon Saliba until I see him in the Premier League, because I think the leagues are different and he needs time to adapt. But if that's what it ends up being, then that's what it ends up being. The best players should play. Alan says it speaks volumes, Jess. Craig says, I like Gabriel a lot. Brilliant center back. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Craig says Saliba and Gabriel partnership waiting for this, Jess. I think they're pretty good friends as well, because Gabriel was not one of the only, because when Saliba came in, obviously there was Aubameyang and Pepe, Lacazette, and I think Guendouzi was gone already by the time he actually got to Arsenal and was there for that little bit of time. But I saw a lot of pictures of him and Gabriel hanging out because, I think they were both really young and they both spoke French. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a little bit of a connection and all that kind of stuff. We just have to see, because, White is a player that I know Arteta really likes. So I wouldn't think right off rip he's going to take White's position, but you never know. If he's as good as people think, if Saliba's as good as people think, then yeah, maybe he does take that spot. Yo-Yo says Gabriel should surpass Laurent Koscielny and Vermaelen, and with White, they should become formidable. I love that Gabriel has goals in him. I think it's been a while since we had center backs that actually score goals. So that really adds something to, his arsenal per se. And I just like everything about him. I like his, the only thing that pisses me off sometimes is when he gets overly fired up, and does stupid stuff and stupid fouls. When he first got in, he was really rash. He's kind of toned that down a little bit, but he still has that little bit of the stupid gene in there sometimes. And it's but it is what it is. And if you ever hear him on the field, it's so funny. Cause you can always hear his voice. You never know what he's saying, but it's this high pitch, squeal. And it's okay, Gabriel's talking. And I just wonder if anybody back there actually knows what he's saying. I highly doubt it. Perry says, yeah, true. I'm not here for that, but I just wanted to compliment her. Oh, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Saida says, everyone seems to be so quick to dismiss Ben White. People were dismissed Gabriel a little bit last season. There was a lot of people that were saying Pablo Mari was better than him. And there were times where, Gabriel was not playing and Pablo Mari was. And so, I think that first season for a center back can be difficult. So if Ben White can have the same type of, improvement, because he does need to improve. He wasn't perfect this season, which I didn't expect him to be. But if he can have that same kind of improvement that Gabriel did from season 1 to season 2, I think he'll be fine. But I also think you have to give players some time to adapt to the team, get better, and, to kind of get used to things before you just write them off. I wouldn't write Ben White off. And also Gabriel came in with a $25 million price tag where Ben White's was double. So the expectation is so much higher. So I would just give him more time. At least that's what I'm going to do. Orpheus Jones says, back White unless Saliba signs a contract and commits to the club. Yeah, we do have to wait on that contract. I do think that that's really important. Hans says we should sign that Bruno G guy. He looks pretty good. Why is everybody talking about Bruno G all of a sudden? You guys know, like, I love Bruno Guimaraes and, excellent player. We should have signed him. I always stand by that. But we didn't, and it's over. So got to move on. St. Vincent says, I would take over rash sometimes more than like being timid. Fair. That's I don't know. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Nikomo says, I think Benjamin White will improve this coming season. He has been unfairly denigrated by assassination to his price and anti-Arteta crew. Jasper says, time for Saliba watch. Sorry, Jess. Yeah, I'm about to get off as well. I just want to read a couple more comments and it'll be time to watch a little bit of Saliba. Yo-Yo says, I'm definitely in the minority, but I believe all the summer signings had a positive season based off expectations and circumstances. Don't think anyone did more or less than required. Fair enough. All right, you guys. So let's go ahead and end it there. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about something. So yeah. You guys stop trying to draw me out with the Bruno G stuff. You guys know how I feel about him. But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.